I want to tell you a story about a man named Raja. Raja is 42. He runs a successful business. He has a family he loves. And by every means or external measure, he has a good life, a real life. But if you watched Raja for a single day, you will notice something. He checks his phone within 30 seconds of waking up. He checks it during breakfast. He checks it 3 times on the drive to work. Yes, even while driving. He checks it in his meetings under the table so no one notices. He checks it during conversations with his wife, pausing mid sentence when the notification lights up. He checks it during his children's school play, capturing it for Instagram instead of watching it with his eyes. He checks it at midnight when he should be sleeping. He checks it at 2 in the morning when he wakes up inexplicably with anxiety. In total, Raja checks his phone 180 times a day. Raja does not consider himself a phone addict. He considers himself someone who is connected, informed, efficient, modern. Raja came to me because of severe anxiety, inability to concentrate, a persistent feeling of emptiness despite a life that looks full and a marriage that was quietly dying of neglect. We sat together and I asked him one question. When was the last time you sat with your own thoughts for 10 minutes? With no phone, no screens, no podcast, no music, just you and your mind. He stared at me and then he said very quietly, I don't think I've done that in years. That sentence is the crisis of our time. And I want to spend this episode telling you exactly what is happening in your brain, in your nervous system, in your quantum field every time you pick up that phone. Not to make you feel guilty, to make you understand what you're actually doing. Because once you understand it, you cannot unknow it. And that unknowing is the beginning of the shift. My name is Teja Priyadarshini. Welcome back to Spiritual Tea. Today, we're going to talk about something that affects everyone listening to this, regardless of whether you consider yourself spiritual, quantum, or anything else, because this is about the survival of your own mind. Let me start with a comparison that I believe is going to make some people furious. And I'm going to make it anyway because it is accurate. In 1950, cigarettes were advertised by doctors. Marlboro had campaigns featuring physicians saying cigarettes were good for your health, for digestion, for relaxation, for nerves. The tobacco industry knew from at least the 1950s onwards that their products was physically destroying the people who used it. They had the research. They buried the research. They funded alternative research that cast doubt on the real research. And they continued advertising cigarettes to children. It took decades, millions of deaths, enormous legal battles. And finally, the world agreed cigarettes are an addictive, deadly product being knowingly sold to a population that was never fully informed of what it was doing to them. I want you to hold that history in your mind because here is what is happening right now. The technology industry knows they have internal research proving that the products that they have designed are psychologically addictive, neurologically harmful, and specifically calibrated to exploit the reward circuits of the most vulnerable users, children, and people with underlying anxiety and depression. They have the research. Some of it has leaked. The executives who built these systems do not let their own children use them, and they are being served to 2-year-olds. Your phone is not a neutral tool. Your phone is the most precisely engineered addiction delivery system in human history, and it is sitting in your pocket right now. Let me tell you how it works. Because once you understand the mechanism, you can begin to work with it instead of inside it. Your brain has a reward system. Its primary chemical is dopamine, the wanting molecule. Not the pleasure molecule, the wanting molecule. The molecule that drives you to seek, anticipate, and pursue. Dopamine is not released when you receive a reward. Dopamine is released in the anticipation of a possible reward. This is crucial. This is the entire mechanism of social media addiction. Every time you open your Instagram, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine. Not because you found something good, because you might find something good. The scroll is the slot machine. You don't know if the next post will be interesting, validating, entertaining, or completely irrelevant. That unpredictability, that variable reward schedule, is the most powerful behavioral reinforcement mechanism known to psychology. It's what makes slot machines addictive. It's what makes gambling addictive. It's what makes changing your phone addictive. Not certainty, uncertainty with occasional reward. The people who designed your social media feed were not engineers first. They were behavioral psychologists who understood the dopamine system precisely and designed the algorithm to exploit it as effectively as possible. The infinite scroll, no stopping point, no end, no you have seen everything, was designed specifically to remove the natural exit point that would allow your dopamine system to rest. The notification, the red badge, the ping, the vibration delivers a micro hit of dopamine before you even see what the notification says. The notification itself is the drug, the like, the comment, the share, each one a variable reward, sometimes present, sometimes not, always anticipated. You are not scrolling because you lack discipline. You are scrolling because you are up against a multi-billion-dollar engineering effort designed to make you scroll. And here is where it gets really serious. Dopamine operates on a tolerance mechanism, exactly like other addictive substances. The more you stimulate it, the more you need to feel the same effect. This is why, after 6 months of heavy scrolling, you find yourself scrolling without even knowing you picked up the phone. This is why, after a year of heavy scrolling, sitting quietly for 5 minutes creates genuine physical discomfort. And this is why, after years of heavy scrolling, the capacity for natural pleasure from conversation, from nature, from books, from your own thoughts has diminished significantly. Because the dopamine system has been overstimulated to the point that normal natural pleasure can no longer compete. The river of your attention has been diverted into a pipe that feeds a machine that someone else built, and the natural channels have dried up. Now, I want to bring in something that nobody else is talking about when they discuss doom scrolling. Because most conversations about phone addiction are about the behavior. But what I want to talk about is the quantum root of why the behavior is so hard to stop. When I work with clients who describe compulsive phone use, and this is now more than half of everyone who comes to me, I notice something consistent in the quantum hypnosis sessions. The scrolling is almost never random. The scrolling is serving a specific emotional function. Let me give you some of the patterns I see. The person with a hyper-vigilant nervous system, born in a childhood where danger could arrive without warning, who scrolls because the infinite feed gives their hypervigilance a job. They are watching, monitoring, staying alert. The algorithm has given their anxiety a purpose that feels productive. It is not. But the nervous system doesn't know that. The person who was not emotionally seen as a child, who scrolls for likes and comments because the external validation soothes a wound that was created before they were old enough to name it. The person who grew up in a chaotic home and uses reliable stimulation of the feed to regulate their nervous system. When the inner world feels unpredictable, the feed is always there, always moving, always providing the external stimulation that drowns out the internal noise. The person who is running from their own thoughts, because somewhere in the quiet of their own mind lives a grief, a fear, or a truth that they're not ready yet to face. The phone is not the problem. The phone is the solution to a problem that predates the phone by decades. This is the piece that the digital detox industry misses entirely. You can take away someone's phone for a week, 2 weeks, a month, And if you do not address the emotional function the phone was serving, they will return to it the moment the detox ends, or they will replace it with a different behavior. Because the underlying need, the thing the phone was answering, is still there, unaddressed, still hungry. I want to tell you a story from the Mahabharata because the ancient world understood what we are living through. They just didn't have the Instagram to show them how it manifests. Duryodhana. Here was a man who had everything: kingdom, power, wealth, respect, beloved by his father, strong in his own right. But he could not stop looking at what his cousins had. Every waking moment, the Pandavas. What do they have? What do they do? How are they perceived? How do they compare to me? He had a beautiful life, and he was completely unable to enjoy it because his attention was permanently fixed on the lives of others. He chose war, actual war, with real death and destruction of his entire family rather than accept that someone else had something he also wanted. Sound familiar? Instagram is Duryodhana's coat, available to everyone 24 hours a day. Everyone else's highlight reel, everyone else's beautiful home, happy relationship, thriving business, perfect body, extraordinary holiday. And your dopamine depleted brain, which can no longer produce natural contentment, scrolling through it at midnight, feeling simultaneously inadequate and desperate for more. The Mahabharata gave us this warning 5,000 years ago. Comparison driven consciousness creates destruction, always, without exception. Not because comparison is shameful, but because it is physically impossible to enjoy your own life while your attention is permanently in someone else's. And the algorithm is specifically designed to keep your attention exactly there. So, what do? I'm not going to give you a list of screen time tips. You've read those, they don't address the root. What I'm going to give you is three questions, and I want you to sit with them honestly without the phone in your hand and think about it. Question one: what do you feel in the 30 seconds before you pick up the phone? Not what you tell yourself you're doing, checking something important, staying informed. What do you feel? Boredom, anxiety, loneliness, the particular discomfort of an unfinished thought? Whatever you feel in that 30-second window, that is what the phone is answering. And that is what needs your actual attention. Question two: how old does the feeling feel? When you sit quietly without the phone and allow what's there to actually be there, how old does the discomfort feel? Not your actual age. How does it feel? How old does it feel? Because if the answer is younger than your current age, the phone is not answering a present day problem. It is answering something much older, something that was there long before smartphones existed, something that had already learned to look for distraction in other forms and found in the phone the most effective distraction it had ever encountered. Question three: what would you have to feel? What thought would you have to have if the phone completely disappeared permanently? I have asked this question in sessions, and the answers are always the same: grief, fear, loneliness. The truth about something they have not been thinking for years. The phone is a postponement device. It postpones the reckoning with what is actually there. And the reckoning, when it finally comes, it is not a crisis, it is a relief. Because once you're in contact with what is actually there, you can finally do something about it. Let me leave you with this. There is a version of your life where you are actually present for it, not recording it, not filtering it, not comparing it, not postponing the feelings it brings up, actually there for it. Present for your child saying something funny and actually laughing, not reaching for the phone to capture the laugh. Present in a conversation with someone you love, actually hearing them, not constructing a response or checking the notification. Present with yourself for 10 minutes in the morning before everyone else's voice enters your head. That version of your life is not a productivity achievement. It is not a digital detox goal. It is what your nervous system was designed for: human connection, sensory presence, the texture of the actual world, the thoughts that only come in quiet, the creativity that only lives in boredom, the grief that only moves when you stop distracting it. The app cannot give you any of this. The app can only give you the feeling that you are present while you're not. Raja, the man I told you about at the beginning of this episode, after 3 months of working together, not on his phone use, but on the hypervigilance underneath it, called me on a Tuesday. He said, I went for a walk this morning without my phone for 45 minutes. I noticed the color of the sky, I heard the birds, I had two thoughts I haven't had in years, and then I sat on a bench and cried. And I don't even know what for, but it felt like something had finally exhaled that had been holding its breath for a very long time. That exhale, that is what is waiting on the other side of the scroll. See you next week.